Ontario and the federal government finally crossed the finish line on a deal with Stellantis. The automotive giant will resume construction on an electric vehicle battery plant in Windsor, Ontario after months of negotiations. The new deal is worth $15 billion in production subsidies. $10 billion of that will come from the federal government and $5 billion from Ontario. The plant is being slated as essential for keeping Ontario and Canada's automotive industry competitive on the global stage.
Today is a great day for Canada. We have announced that Canada and Ontario will be sharing the investments in Stellantis and VW, 2/3, 1/3 in those two projects.
François-Philippe Champagne is the Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry. Minister Champagne, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So, Minister, I'm going over the terms of the deal that have been released, and on costs with Stellantis, it's $15 billion in production subsidies. That's $10 billion from the federal government, $5 billion from the province. But the surprise to me is that the province is now also picking up 1/3 of the production subsidies at the Volkswagen plant in St. Thomas. So how did that come together?
Well, first of all, what you said, that, and I think what matters to Canadians is that our workers won today. Our industry won, and I would say our nation won. That was the big thing, and that's why you saw it took some time to negotiate. It was an epic negotiation, I must tell you, with Stellantis and LG, because my mission was to get a good deal for Windsor, a good deal for Brampton. And I would say, just to go back on the $15 billion, this is really more akin to a tax break over 10 years than a check. Because, let's be, if you want to explain that to our viewers, it's really, they first need to build a plant, which they need to invest $4.5 billion. Then they need to produce and sell battery cells and modules. So only after that, there would be what we call a production support from both the Ontario government and government of Canada. Now, when it comes to Volkswagen, what we said to Ontario is we say, listen, this is a generational opportunity. This is probably the biggest transformation we've seen in the industrial landscape in modern times, I would say, and therefore we need to be in this together. So we said with them, you know what, we need kind of a new auto pack where you would put 1/3 of the cost and we would be putting 2/3 of the cost when it comes to these incentives that we need to do in order to match what's being done in the United States. So obviously this is the way forward. And I think today, David, my mission, as you know, has been from the get-go to really position Canada's auto sector for the 21st century. And now with Volkswagen, with Stellantis and LG, and more to come, I would say we are firmly in the leading position when it comes to this generational transformation in the auto industry.
Right, but the Volkswagen deal in St. Thomas was a done deal that was signed off on, and now it appears to, at least on the subsidy side of things, been reopened to get Ontario to pay 1/3 of that cost. So how were you able to convince Ontario to do that, and how important was it for your government to have Ontario pick up a larger share in both of these deals?
Well, it was fundamental, and I would say, you remember, you heard me say pay your fair share. This is about also national equity, in the sense that obviously we want to support the auto sector, not only in Ontario, you'll see a number of things coming in Quebec as well. And that's how it should be in a federation like Canada. We know that there's going to be a lot of benefits for Brampton, for Windsor, for southwestern Ontario, for Ontario as a whole and as a nation, because for me, the more we bring these international players, the more people want to come in Canada. But on the other end, we've also said that we'd be very selective. We would provide limited incentive, would be very targeted, and we can only do a few of them. So as opposed to what the United States has done, which is basically offering a tax credit, a refundable tax credit, we say we're going to negotiate something which is akin to that, but we're going to be very selective. We've done that with Volkswagen. We're doing that with Stellantis and LG, which everyone knows. And, there will be probably 1 or 2 more, but that's going to be it, because that's what Canada would say can afford. We cannot afford to do what the United States did necessarily, but we want to keep our fair share of the auto sector in North America. And I think what we're doing today is going to not only preserve jobs, you're talking about 2,500 jobs coming out of that plant, but preserving tens of thousands of jobs. And for me, every Canadian understands that you need to invest if you want to have a return. And for me, this is an investment in our future. This is an investment in our workers.
You say you need to be selective, and maybe the country can only have one or two more of these. Are you in any kind of advanced talks with that third and fourth potential battery plant? And would you look at options outside of Ontario?
Well, listen, we're talking to everyone. And like I said, we're going to be very selective. That's what we've said from the get-go. We have landed Volkswagen. We have confirmed Stellantis and LG. Everyone would like to come to Canada because you know what? You always go back. Why we can land these investments? It's because we have talented workers. They come here because they know that's where they find the best talent. The second thing is around the ecosystem. You've seen that Bloomberg ranked Canada second in the world when it comes to the battery ecosystem. So we've done a long way from where we started. Third, I would say people realize that Canada is the only country in the Western world which has all the critical minerals to build batteries and semiconductor. Fourth is renewable energy. I think we're going to move from electric car to a green car, and that really matters. And fifth, I would say, is our trade agreements. I always pitch Canada, not a country of 40 million now, but a country which would give you preferential market access to 1.5 billion consumers. So these elements, you never win on the money when you're Canada. You have to win on the other things. And I would say the first one is really our talented workers, our critical mineral, our renewable energy. And yes, we're talking, everyone wants to talk to us. But like I said, we'll be very selective, and we say there's going to be only a very few of these investments that we can support. But I think this is a great day for our workers because I think now Canada shines around the world as leading this industrial revolution that we're seeing in the auto sector.
Well, clearly money is a big part of it, though. It's about $28 billion in subsidies now, production subsidies. And I know they have to build the plant to make the batteries and then sell them before they get any of the money, but it's about $28 billion combined from the federal government and the Ontario government to two companies that are both very profitable international car makers. So what do you say to Canadians who might be skeptical about this industrial policy you're embarking on?
What I would say, just look what's going on in the United States. What we've said from the get-go is that we're going to keep a level playing field with the United States. Why? Because our two economies are integrated. And also because, this is about being ambitious. This is about seeing the opportunities. This is about building the Canada of the future. If you look at the economic impact, just look at Volkswagen. We said, we predict that over 30 years, you're going to have 200 to 400 billion to the Canadian economy. Something similar when it comes to Stellantis. I keep saying to Canadians, if we want to keep investing in our social safety net, we need to invest also to get returns. For me, this is an investment that will pay for itself in a couple of years, and then will provide benefits and revenues for both the federal government and provincial government for generations to come. Look, the CEO of Volkswagen was saying we're not in Canada for 5 years, for 10 years. We're here for 100 years. Just to run the plant of Volkswagen, you're talking like $1 billion per year in terms of salaries and what's needed. So for me, when I look at these investments on behalf of Canadians, and that's why, we're not pushed over. It took a lot of time to negotiate that deal with Stellantis. Why? Because I want to get the best possible deal for our workers, for the industry, and for Canada. And yes, we pushed back. We put a cap. But we also said this is going to be akin to a tax break over 10 years. But I think Canadians understand. They understand that in their own finance. If you want to have a return, you need to invest. That's the same thing for government. So for me, that's an investment, creating jobs, positioning Canada as a leader, but also generating returns for the country for generations to come.
One of the other things Stellantis has agreed to do in this is establish a research and development facility in Windsor. We don't have a lot of details on that. So how big will this be? What exactly will the R&D focus on? And how many jobs are we talking?
Well, every deal we're doing, David, this is kind of the new economy. It's a knowledge economy. So every time we've been providing support, whether it's Moderna, whether it's Stellantis, whether it's Volkswagen, whether what we did in Alberta when it came to the investment we did in the first green cement plant or the first hydrogen plant in Edmonton, we always have a component around research and development. We know that productivity is an issue in our country, so we need to make sure that when we invest public funds in these companies, that there's also benefits when it comes to research and development. So that's the same thing we did in Stellantis. The fact that they're going to put their research center in Canada is a good thing. Just to give you an example, when we did the same thing with GM, you may recall, that's the Bright Drop, which is the commercial electric vehicle that is being manufactured by GM. You may recall that this invention or this innovation came from the R&D Center in Canada. That's how we got the mandate to produce them for North America. For me, this is not only investing in brick and mortars, this is investing in the technology, in the innovation, in the intellectual property, which is going to be needed to give us an edge when it comes to allocating mandates in North America.
Okay, so just as a final point in the 30 seconds or so we have left, the template, 2/3 from the feds, 1/3 from the province. Is that what other provinces should expect to pay if they want to get in on the big industrial developments like these with the federal government? The 2/3, 1/3 split, is that your message to the premiers on the level of support they'll be required to pony up for big developments?
Well, we're defining the way we're going to be engaging with provinces. These are generational opportunities. This is something quite unprecedented because you've seen these type of incentives south of the border. And I think it's only fair that we share that between the provinces and the federal government. So I think that what we have achieved, like you said, in Ontario, is a blueprint. And certainly we'll be talking with different provinces when we're looking at these big industrial facilities that would be around the country. Because I think that the provinces understand this is Team Canada. And you know, what it shows to the world, again, David, is that when we play as Team Canada, we win. We won when it came to the first hydrogen plant in Alberta. We won when it came to the first green cement plant in North America. We won with Volkswagen. We won with GM POSCO in Quebec. We're going to be announcing other things soon in Quebec as well in the auto sector. I'd say things are looking pretty bright for the industry, for the country, but also for our capacity to attract these generational opportunities. This is all for me about ambition and vision, and that's why we're going to keep at it, but in a very disciplined way.
Minister Champagne, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
This deal will have a significant impact on the Canadian and Ontario economies, especially in the Windsor area. The Mayor of Windsor, Drew Dilkens, joins me now. Mayor Dilkens, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So how much did your blood pressure drop when this deal was finally reached? Because there were some tense moments, I would imagine, over the last few weeks.
Boy, there was a lot of trepidation over the last 7 or so weeks, and people in the community very concerned. You know, there was a lot of elation back in March of 2022 when the first electric vehicle battery manufacturing facility was announced for Canada in our backyard, $5 billion, 3,000 jobs. Everyone here knew how important it was. And so to get it back on track, I think was really important. And people in our community are certainly excited today.
What do you make of the price tag? It's $15 billion more dollars. I know it's on the production side of things, $10 billion from the federal government, $5 billion from the province. I mean, what's this plant going to have to deliver to be worth that much money?
Well, listen, I think it's a fundamental question of, are we willing to be competitive or not? Because living in a border city like I do, I know what the market is like 5 minutes away from my house over in Michigan. I know how competitive they are. I've had offers put on the board table in front of me saying, can you match what Michigan or Ohio is offering us? And so if Canada, if Ontario, if we want to be competitive as a nation and as a province against what's happening just across the border in the United States, we have to be ready and willing to be a player. And I think the sign from our federal government here, the sign and the partnership with the provincial government is a sure sign that we are willing to be competitive, put up the money to match the Inflation Reduction Act, and be a real player in the automotive space in North America.
It didn't look too good, you know, a few weeks back. You said the trajectory of this deal was not looking pretty. That was about 7 weeks ago. I mean, where were you in the final stages of this? What role did the city play in getting this across the finish line?
Well, listen, I think it's fair to say that, yes, this deal cannot happen without significant investment from the federal and provincial government. What we did as a city here, based on our Windsor Works economic development plan, we went all in, all chips in the center to make sure that we were doing everything we could to land this deal. So we bought all of the land and assembled all the land that the battery factory is being built on. We offered community improvement plans, so tax incremental financing incentives. And we have been a strong supporter of our largest employer, which is Stellantis, and their partnership with LG to create this NextStar plant. We went all all in because we understand the importance of what this transformation means to the auto sector in Canada, but for our region as the auto capital of Canada. We know that this is important, and we have been burning the phones and uniting the community here. So I like to say that this was a full community effort. It wasn't just the mayor and city council. This was the labor unions coming forward, St. Clair College, the University of Windsor, and really the whole community signing a petition to let our federal and provincial governments know how important this was. And they got it. They certainly understood it. But at the end of the day, someone actually had to commit to a significant amount of money to be competitive with the United States. And I'm thankful to Minister Champagne. I'm thankful to Premier Ford for all they did to get this across the finish line.
One of the things in the deal announced today is the company's agreeing to invest more in Canada and Ontario, including the establishment of a research and development facility in Windsor. What can you tell us about that, and how significant is that?
Well, Dave, this was the central part of our concern. And so I don't think the cell production piece of the deal was ever really in jeopardy, but it was the other piece, the other differentiators here from what's happening up the road in St. Thomas. And that relates specifically to the module production and the R&D components. The combination of both of those is about 1,000 jobs. And so Stellantis already operates an advanced research and development center in the city of Windsor. They've been here for decades. And part of this whole transformation with NextStar is that they were going to hire 650 basically engineers in their R&D center here to continue to work on the advancements in battery technology, not just what's being produced today, but what's coming down the pipeline for other cars that are going to be manufactured here and across the border. And so that was a central piece in the discussion, and that was the piece that was in jeopardy. The module piece and the R&D piece together, about 1,000 jobs. So the fact that Doug Ford and Francois Philippe Champagne were able to cement the deal, make sure that the funding was there for those two components, I think it speaks well to how much we're willing to be a player as a Canadian, certainly as an Ontarian, and right here in Windsor, Essex, we're very, very happy about that.
We went through this drama, and the country is putting up all of this money because of the U.S. Inflation Reduction Act, right? That without this, you mentioned Michigan, you mentioned Ohio, the gravitational pull of those incentives to bring those jobs there. I mean, as a border town, as an auto town, how do you feel the weight of the IRA as it's playing out right now?
Oh my gosh, I just think of the battery factory being built here in Windsor, and it's back on track. But within 200 miles of the city of Windsor, there are 4 other battery factories of a similar size, one slightly bigger, being constructed as well. So the United States, if the city of Windsor went all in on our little portion, the United States is all chips in the center on almost $1 trillion worth of incentives in the Inflation Reduction Act. And so they know that cementing big projects like a $5 billion battery factory, once you offer the incentive, once the company makes the decision, when that incentive goes away by 2031 or so, they're not moving. Once you have the footprint, you're not uprooting a $5 billion investment. They're going to be here for decades to come. So they know that it's important. And that's why it's important that our federal government, that's important for Ontario as well, to make sure that we can be competitive, that we can be players, and certainly get our piece of the share, our share of the piece. It's absolutely imperative if we want to be a player in the auto space to make sure that we have these incentives. And don't forget, they're time limited. And so, yes, it's a lot of money, but the IRA disappears by about 2031, and it scales down before it disappears entirely. So there's a lot of money up front to land these pieces, but eventually it goes away, and we're going to bear the fruits of these investments for many decades to come.
And just as a final point, as important as the plant is, it's only one part of the whole industry and the value chain. You've described it as the bread and butter deal, but the gravy being all the investment in the automotive sector that will follow. So how do you anticipate, and we know there's production guarantees for Brampton, for example, in this. How do you anticipate this spilling over into the broader economy?
I think it's incredible. What LG told us when we landed the deal is, guys, start preparing another 200 acres of land, because there's probably 1,500 additional jobs in the supply chain that are going to follow this particular investment. And we're already seeing that happen. In fact, since this deal was announced yesterday, we've had 3 companies in the wings that were ready to go. We're bringing these deals to City Council at our in-camera meeting on Monday, and we're trying to get these over the finish line to make sure that we see these investments land right here in Windsor that benefit Ontario and Canada as well. And so the value chain and the vertical integration of this particular project with modules, with cell production, with R&D is what differentiates it from the Volkswagen investment in St. Thomas, and what makes it so important to make sure that we get this built, get all of these people employed, and certainly cement our place as the auto capital of Canada, because we've got great things to offer here in Canada and in Ontario with all the critical mineral supply chains that we have. We're just at the beginning of something that is going to pay dividends for decades and decades for all of Ontario.